My name is Claire, and for 4 years I believed I was married to my soulmate. That was before I discovered he had been telling his friends I was nothing more than a gold digger living off his success. What he didn't know was that I owned everything he claimed as his, including the multi-million-dollar trust fund he thought belonged to his family. It all started to unravel on a rain-soaked Thursday evening in October. I had just returned from a business trip to New York, exhausted but excited to surprise my husband Daniel with the good news about my latest acquisition. My investment firm had just closed a deal that would net us nearly $2 million in profits. I wanted to celebrate with the man I loved, maybe finally book that trip to the Maldives we had been talking about for months. The house was dark when I pulled into our circular driveway, which seemed odd since Daniel's Porsche was parked in its usual spot. I grabbed my luggage and briefcase, fishing for my keys in the designer purse Daniel had given me for our anniversary. As I approached the front door, I could hear voices coming from inside, followed by the unmistakable sound of Daniel's booming laugh. I paused at the door, smiling to myself. He must be having the guys over for poker night. I loved when Daniel entertained his friends. He would get so animated, gesturing wildly as he told stories, his eyes lighting up with that boyish charm that had first captured my heart at a charity gala 5 years ago. But as I inserted my key into the lock, something made me freeze. Daniel's voice carried clearly through the mahogany door, and the words I heard made my blood turn to ice. "I'm telling you guys, Claire is the perfect setup," Daniel was saying, his voice thick with alcohol and arrogance. "She thinks she's some hotshot businesswoman, but really she's just playing with daddy's money. The best part is, she's so grateful to have landed someone like me that she pays for everything without even realizing it." Raucous laughter followed his statement. I recognized the voices of his college fraternity brothers, Marcus and Jake, along with his business partner Tommy. "Dude, that's genius," Marcus said, his voice slurred. "So she actually thinks she's successful." "Oh, she's convinced," Daniel replied with a chuckle that now sounded cruel to my ears. "She goes on these little business trips, plays with her investment accounts, thinks she's Warren Buffett or something. Meanwhile, I'm the one with the real connections, the real family money. She's just a pretty face who happened to inherit some cash from her grandfather." My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my keys. 4 years of marriage. 4 years of what I thought was partnership, love, and mutual respect. And this whole time, Daniel saw me as some naive little girl playing with inherited money. "But doesn't she own a bunch of companies?" Jake asked. I could hear the confusion in his voice. "Please," Daniel scoffed. "Her grandfather left her a trust fund and some stock portfolios. She thinks buying a few businesses makes her some kind of mogul. The funny thing is, most of her success comes from connections I've given her. My family's network, my father's business relationships. She just doesn't realize it." Tommy's voice joined the conversation. "And she doesn't suspect anything about the real money." "Are you kidding?" Daniel's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Claire thinks the house payments come from my consulting fees. She thinks the Porsche lease is from my investment returns. She has no idea about the Whitmore Trust or the offshore accounts. As far as she knows, we're just two moderately successful professionals living within our means." The Whitmore Trust. My maiden name was Whitmore. My grandfather had been James Whitmore, founder of Whitmore Industries, one of the largest manufacturing conglomerates on the West Coast. When he died, he left me everything. Not my parents, not my siblings. Me. But according to my husband of 4 years, I was just a spoiled little rich girl playing businesswoman while he supported our lifestyle with money that was, in fact, mine. I stood there in the rain, designer heels sinking slightly into the perfectly manicured lawn I had paid to install, listening to the man I loved describe me as a pathetic gold digger to his friends. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. "The best part," Daniel continued, clearly enjoying his audience, "is that she's so insecure about whether I really love her that she keeps trying to prove herself. Just last month she bought me that Rolex, trying to show how much she appreciates me. I swear, sometimes I feel bad about how easy this is." "Don't feel bad, man," Marcus said. "If she's dumb enough to bankroll your lifestyle, that's on her. Besides, Jake added, it's not like you're hurting her. She's got more money than she knows what to do with. I backed away from the door slowly, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they would hear it. My mind was racing, trying to process what I had just heard. Daniel thought he was living off family money that didn't exist, while I had been funding our entire lifestyle with a fortune he didn't know I actually controlled. 4 years ago, when I met Daniel at that charity gala, I had been worth approximately $47 million. Today, thanks to smart investments and strategic business acquisitions, that number had grown to just over $62 million. Daniel knew none of this. As far as he was concerned, I was a trust fund baby with maybe a few million inherited from my grandfather. The truth was so much more complicated. When my grandfather died 7 years ago, he left me controlling interest in Whitmore Industries, along with a personal fortune that had been carefully hidden in offshore accounts and investment portfolios. The will specified that the inheritance was to remain confidential until I turned 35, at which point I would gain full legal control. Until then, a team of lawyers and financial advisors managed everything under strict confidentiality agreements. I was now 34. In 6 months, the world would know that Claire Whitmore was not just an heiress, but one of the wealthiest women under 40 on the West Coast. Daniel had no idea. I drove around for 2 hours that night, sitting in my car in empty parking lots, trying to figure out what to do with what I had learned. The rain pounded against my windshield as I replayed Daniel's words over and over in my mind. He thought I was pathetic. He thought I was using him. He thought my business success was fake. But more than that, he was actively lying to me about our finances while accusing me of being a gold digger. When I finally returned home, Daniel was waiting for me in the kitchen. His face creased with what looked like genuine concern. "Baby, where have you been?" he said, pulling me into a warm embrace that now felt like a performance. "I was worried sick when I saw your car was gone." "I went for a drive," I said, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "I needed to clear my head after the flight." Daniel held me at arm's length, studying my face with those piercing blue eyes that had once made me weak in the knees. "You look upset. Did something happen in New York?" "No, everything went perfectly," I said. "Actually, I have some good news. The Morrison acquisition went through. We should clear about $1.8 million in profit." Daniel's face lit up with what I now recognized as calculated excitement. "Baby, that's incredible. We should celebrate." "We should," I agreed, watching his expression carefully. "Maybe we can finally take that trip to the Maldives." "Absolutely," Daniel said, spinning me around the kitchen. "My successful wife deserves the best." My successful wife. The words felt like poison in my ears now that I knew what he really thought of my success. That night, as Daniel slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and planning. I had built a $62 million fortune by being patient, strategic, and ruthlessly intelligent when necessary. Daniel was about to learn that his naive little wife was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The next morning I made a phone call that would change everything. "Gerald, it's Claire," I said when my grandfather's former lawyer answered his phone. Gerald Morrison had been managing my inheritance for 7 years, and he knew exactly how much Daniel didn't know about my real financial situation. "Claire, what a pleasant surprise." Gerald's warm voice filled my ear. "How can I help you today?" "I need to accelerate the revelation timeline," I said. "How quickly can we arrange for Daniel to learn the truth about my inheritance?" Gerald was quiet for a moment. "May I ask what's prompted this change?" I told him everything. About the conversation I had overheard, about Daniel's perception of our marriage, about the lies he had been telling himself and others about our financial arrangement. "I see," Gerald said when I finished. "And what outcome are you hoping to achieve?" "I want him to understand exactly who he's been lying to," I said. "I want him to realize that every accusation he's made about me being a gold digger applies to him instead." "Very well," Gerald said. "I can arrange for the full disclosure to happen at a time and place of your choosing. Do you have something specific in mind?" I thought about it for a moment, remembering Daniel's cruel laughter from the night before. Actually, yes. I want to do it in front of his friends. The same friends he was bragging to about how he's been using me. That's quite bold, Gerald observed. My grandfather didn't raise me to be timid, I replied. That weekend, I suggested to Daniel that we host a dinner party. Nothing too elaborate, just a nice evening with his closest friends and their wives or girlfriends. Daniel loved the idea, especially when I mentioned that I wanted to cook his favorite meal, beef Wellington, which took hours to prepare and cost a fortune in ingredients. You're amazing, you know that? Daniel said, kissing my forehead as I made the guest list. Marcus and Jake are going to be so impressed. I hope so, I said sweetly. I want them to see how happy we are. I spent the week preparing meticulously. I hired a professional cleaning service to make sure every inch of our house was spotless. I arranged for fresh flowers from the most expensive florist in town. I ordered the finest wines from Daniel's favorite wine shop, charging everything to the credit card he assumed was connected to my modest trust fund. But more importantly, I worked with Gerald to prepare a very special surprise for my guests. The dinner party was set for Saturday evening at 7 o'clock. I spent all day Saturday cooking, filling our house with the rich aromas of herbs and roasted meat. Daniel was in an excellent mood, helping me set the table with our finest china and crystal glasses. This is going to be perfect, he said, adjusting the floral centerpiece I had arranged. The guys are going to be so jealous that I have a wife who can cook like this. I want everything to be perfect, I agreed. This is a very special evening. Marcus and Jake arrived first, both bringing their current girlfriends. Tommy came alone, having recently gone through a messy divorce that had cost him half his assets. Daniel greeted everyone with his characteristic enthusiasm, playing the role of gracious host while I finished preparing the meal. As we sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily. Daniel regaled everyone with stories from his latest business deals, gesturing dramatically as he described closing a particularly difficult client. His friends hung on every word, laughing at all the right moments and asking impressed questions about his success. Daniel, you always land on your feet, Marcus said, raising his wine glass. Some guys have all the luck. Luck has nothing to do with it, Daniel replied with a grin. It's all about strategy and knowing the right people. Tommy nodded approvingly. Speaking of strategy, how's the investment portfolio looking these days? Extremely well, Daniel said. Claire and I have been very smart about diversifying our assets. I smiled and said nothing, refilling wine glasses and playing the role of supportive wife. But inside, I was counting down the minutes until my surprise arrived. At exactly 9:30, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, standing up quickly. Actually, everyone stay seated. I have a little surprise. Daniel looked confused but pleased. A surprise? Claire, you didn't need to do anything else. Dinner was incredible. Oh, this is something very special, I said, walking toward the front door. Something I think you'll all find very enlightening. I opened the door to find Gerald Morrison standing on my front porch, briefcase in hand and wearing his most serious expression. Behind him stood a man I didn't recognize, also carrying official-looking documents. Good evening, Mrs. Whitmore, Gerald said formally. Are you ready to proceed? More than ready, I replied. Please come in. I led Gerald and his companion into the dining room, where my guests were staring in confusion. Daniel half rose from his chair, his face creased with concern. Claire, who is this? He asked. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Gerald Morrison, I said, my voice perfectly calm. He's been my family's attorney for over 20 years. Gerald, you remember my husband Daniel? Gerald nodded politely. Mr. Whitmore. Though I should mention, your wife has retained her maiden name legally, so it's actually Mr. Chen. Daniel's face flushed slightly. We had agreed when we married that I would keep my name professionally but take his socially. Apparently, Gerald wasn't interested in social niceties tonight. Gerald has some documents to share with everyone, I continued. Documents that I think will clear up some misconceptions about our family's financial situation. The room had gone completely silent. Daniel was staring at me with growing alarm, while his friends exchanged confused glances. Gerald opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to share with you is information that has been kept confidential for 7 years, per the terms of James Whitmore's will." Marcus choked slightly on his wine. "James Whitmore. As in Whitmore Industries." "The very same," Gerald confirmed. "Claire is his sole heir and has been since his death in 2016. Daniel's face had gone completely white. "What are you talking about?" Gerald placed a document on the table in front of Daniel. "This is a copy of your wife's current financial statement. As you can see, she has controlling interest in Whitmore Industries, valued at approximately $41 million. She also holds personal assets totaling $21 million in various investment accounts and real estate holdings." The silence in the room was deafening. Daniel picked up the document with shaking hands, his eyes scanning the numbers that seemed impossible to him. "But," he stammered, "but she said she inherited a trust fund from her grandfather." "That's correct," Gerald said patiently. "The trust fund is worth approximately $62 million. What Mrs. Whitmore didn't mention is that she has been the sole beneficiary and decision-maker for that trust since she was 27 years old." Jake was the first to find his voice. "Are you saying Claire is worth $62 million? "That's the current valuation, yes," Gerald confirmed. "Though with recent acquisitions and market growth, the number is closer to $65 million as of this week." Daniel was staring at the document in his hands like it was written in a foreign language. "This can't be right. The house payments, the car payments, all of our expenses. I've been covering everything with my consulting income and family investments." Gerald's companion, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "Actually, sir, that's not accurate. I'm Michael Torres from Sterling Financial Services. We've been managing your household accounts at Mrs. Whitmore's request." He placed another set of documents on the table. "These are records of all payments made on your behalf over the past 4 years. Your mortgage, car lease, credit card payments, insurance, utilities, even your country club membership. All funded by Mrs. Whitmore's accounts." Daniel was shaking now. "That's impossible. I've been making those payments myself." "No, sir," Michael said gently. "You've been making payments into accounts that Mrs. Whitmore established and funds. She wanted you to feel like you were contributing equally to your household expenses." Tommy leaned forward, studying the documents. "Daniel, these numbers don't lie. Claire has been paying for everything." "But the Porsche," Daniel said desperately. "I leased the Porsche through my business account." "Your business account that is subsidized by a monthly transfer from your wife's investment portfolio," Michael confirmed. "Mrs. Whitmore felt it was important for you to maintain your independence and professional dignity." Marcus was shaking his head in disbelief. "Dude, Claire has been bankrolling your entire lifestyle while you thought you were supporting her." The irony of the situation was hitting everyone in the room except Daniel, who still seemed to be in shock. The same man who had been bragging about how his naive wife was living off his family money was discovering that he had been living off his wife's family money the entire time. "Daniel," I said softly, speaking for the first time since Gerald had arrived. "Do you remember what you told your friends on Thursday night about me being a gold digger who was grateful to have landed someone like you?" Daniel's eyes snapped up to meet mine, and in that moment, he realized I had heard everything. "Claire, I can explain," he began, but I held up my hand to stop him. "Do you remember telling them that I was just playing with Daddy's money while you provided the real financial stability?" Continued. "Do you remember laughing about how I bought you that Rolex to prove how much I appreciated you?" The entire table was staring at Daniel now, understanding dawning on their faces. Marcus looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "The thing is, Daniel," I said, my voice still perfectly calm, "every single thing you accused me of, you've been doing yourself. You've been living off my money while telling yourself and everyone else that I was using you." Jake cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe we should go." "Oh, please don't leave on my account," I said pleasantly. This is just getting interesting. Gerald reached into his briefcase again and pulled out another document. There's something else Mrs. Whitmore asked me to share with everyone. He placed the new document on the table. This is a post-nuptial agreement that Mrs. Whitmore had prepared 3 years ago but never presented to her husband. Daniel picked up the document with trembling hands. A post-nup. The agreement states that in the event of divorce, Mr. Chen would be entitled to 50% of any assets acquired during the marriage through joint effort, Gerald explained. However, it also clearly delineates that Mrs. Whitmore's inheritance and any growth of that inheritance would remain her separate property. Daniel was scanning the document frantically. But we never signed this. No, you didn't, I confirmed. I decided not to present it because I thought we were partners. I thought you loved me for who I was, not for what you thought I could provide. Tommy was adding up numbers on his phone. Daniel, according to this, if Claire divorces you under current Washington state law, you'd be entitled to maybe $2 or $3 million. But if she'd presented this post-nup when she first had it drawn up, I would have been entitled to nothing, Daniel finished quietly. Actually, you would have been entitled to keep everything you brought into the marriage, I corrected. Which, according to these financial records, was approximately $37,000 in credit card debt and a car lease you were 3 months behind on. The room fell silent again as the full scope of the situation sank in. Daniel had been living a complete fantasy for 4 years, supported entirely by the woman he had been describing as a gold digger to his friends. Marcus finally broke the silence. Daniel, you realize how fucked up this is, right? Language, please, Gerald said mildly. We are discussing a lady's finances. I'm sorry, Claire, Marcus continued. Daniel, you told us your wife was using you for money. Your wife has been paying for everything while letting you think you were the breadwinner. Do you understand how backwards that is? Daniel was staring at the table, his face red with shame and confusion. I don't understand how this happened. It happened because I loved you, I said simply. It happened because I wanted you to feel successful and important and valued. It happened because when you told me about your business struggles and your family's financial problems, I wanted to help without making you feel like less of a man. I stood up from my chair and walked around the table to stand behind Daniel. It happened because I thought if I could just love you enough, support you enough, believe in you enough, you would eventually see me as a partner instead of a burden. Daniel looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Claire, I never meant for it to get like this. But it did get like this, I said. And instead of talking to me about your insecurities or your fears about not contributing equally, you decided to rewrite our entire relationship in your mind. You turned me into the villain so you could feel better about accepting my help. Tommy was shaking his head in disgust. Daniel, this is the most messed up thing I've ever seen. The worst part, I continued, is that you were so convinced of your own version of events that you started to believe it. You actually convinced yourself that you were supporting me financially while I was grateful for your generosity. Gerald cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitmore, shall I proceed with the final documents? Yes, please, I said, returning to my seat. Gerald pulled out one last folder. These are divorce papers. Mrs. Whitmore is filing for dissolution of marriage on grounds of irreconcilable differences. Daniel's head snapped up. Divorce. The papers detail a very generous settlement offer, Gerald continued. Mr. Chen would receive a one-time payment of $5 million and would be able to keep his car and any personal belongings. In exchange, he would sign a confidentiality agreement and waive any claims to Mrs. Whitmore's inheritance or business interests. $5 million. I was offering Daniel $5 million to walk away quietly, even though legally he was entitled to far less and morally he was entitled to nothing. Jake whistled low. $5 million. Daniel, that's more than generous. It's more than I ever got from my divorce, Tommy added bitterly. Daniel was staring at me across the table. You're really divorcing me? Did you think I would stay married to someone who sees me as a pathetic gold digger? Yes. Did you think I would continue to fund the lifestyle of a man who tells his friends that I'm just grateful to have landed someone like him? But I love you, Daniel said desperately. No, you don't, I replied sadly. You love the version of me that you created in your head. The grateful little rich girl who was lucky to have your attention. You don't love the real me, because you never bothered to find out who the real me is. Marcus was reading over the divorce documents. Claire, this settlement is incredibly generous. Why are you being so nice to him? Because despite everything, I did love him, I said. And because I want him to have the chance to build a real life for himself, with someone who will love him for who he actually is instead of who he pretends to be. Daniel was crying openly now. Claire, please. We can fix this. I can change. How? Yes. How do we fix 4 years of lies? How do we fix the fact that you've been living off my money while convincing yourself that I was using you? How do we fix the fact that you told your friends I was a gold digger while living in a house I own, driving a car I pay for, wearing clothes I bought? The questions hung in the air unanswered because there were no answers. Some things couldn't be fixed with apologies or promises to change. Gerald began packing up his documents. Mr. Chen, you have 30 days to review the settlement offer with your own attorney. After that, Mrs. Whitmore will proceed with standard divorce proceedings. What does that mean? Daniel asked. It means instead of receiving $5 million, you'll receive whatever the court decides you're entitled to under Washington state law, Gerald explained. Which, given the evidence of deception and the prenuptial assets involved, would likely be significantly less. After Gerald and Michael left, the dinner party broke up quickly. Daniel's friends mumbled awkward goodbyes, avoiding eye contact with both of us. I could hear them talking in hushed, shocked voices as they walked to their cars. Daniel and I sat alone at our dining room table, surrounded by the remnants of what was supposed to be a celebration dinner. The beef Wellington had gone cold. The expensive wine sat unfinished in crystal glasses, and the future we had planned together lay in pieces around us. I really did love you, Daniel said quietly. I know you did, I replied. But you loved a version of me that doesn't exist. And I loved a version of you that apparently doesn't exist either. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Why did you never tell me about the money? The real money, I mean. I considered his question carefully. Because I wanted to know that you loved me for who I am, not what I'm worth. I wanted to build something real with someone who saw me as an equal partner. But we weren't equal, Daniel pointed out. You were supporting me the whole time. We could have been equal, I said. If you had been honest about your situation. If you had let me help you build something instead of letting me unknowingly subsidize your pride. Daniel was quiet for a long time. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry for all of it. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't change the fact that you spent 4 years lying to both of us about what our marriage really was. 3 months later, Daniel signed the settlement agreement. He took the $5 million and moved to Portland, where he started a small consulting firm with money that was actually his for the first time in years. We don't speak anymore, but I heard through mutual friends that he's doing well and has started dating someone new, a teacher who earns her own modest salary and splits every dinner check. I hope he's learned to be honest with her in a way he never was with me. As for me, I kept the house, though I've redecorated completely to erase the memories of our life together. I've started dating again, slowly and carefully. The men I meet now know exactly who I am from the beginning. There are no secrets, no pretenses, no comfortable lies about who pays for what. It's lonelier sometimes, but it's honest. And after 4 years of living in someone else's fantasy version of my life, honesty feels like a luxury I can't afford to give up. Last week, I ran into Marcus at a charity event downtown. He approached me hesitantly, clearly unsure of how I would react to seeing him. Claire, I owe you an apology, he said. We all do. We should have questioned Daniel's version of things instead of just believing him. Why would you question it? Yes. You had no reason to think he was lying. But we did though, Marcus admitted. There were signs that didn't add up. Daniel never had money when we went out together. He was always asking to split checks or saying he'd forgotten his wallet. And that house, the car, even the clothes he wore. They were all too expensive for someone making what he claimed to make from consulting. So why didn't you say anything? Marcus shrugged uncomfortably. I guess we wanted to believe his version because it made us feel better about our own relationships. If Daniel had landed this successful, wealthy wife who was grateful to have him, maybe there was hope for the rest of us. His honesty was refreshing even if it was painful. For what it's worth, Marcus continued, I think you handled the whole thing with incredible grace. You could have destroyed Daniel publicly, but you gave him a chance to start over. I didn't do it for him, I said. I did it for me. I didn't want to become the kind of person who uses money as a weapon, even when I had every right to. These days, I spend my time running Whitmore Industries and managing my investment portfolio. I've also started a foundation that provides financial literacy education to young women, helping them understand how to build and protect their own wealth instead of depending on someone else's. The work is fulfilling in a way that my marriage never was. When I make business decisions now, I don't have to pretend to be smaller or less capable than I am to protect someone else's ego. When I succeed, I don't have to downplay my achievements to avoid making someone else feel inadequate. I'm dating someone new now, a fellow business owner who earns his own substantial income and insists on paying his fair share of everything. When I told him about Daniel and the 4 years of financial deception, his reaction was immediate and visceral. He did what? Michael had said, his face darkening with anger. He lived off your money while calling you a gold digger. It's more complicated than that, I had started to explain, but Michael cut me off. No, Claire, it's not complicated at all. That's psychological manipulation combined with financial abuse. The fact that he convinced himself he was the victim just makes it worse. Michael's reaction helped me understand something I hadn't fully grasped before. What Daniel had done wasn't just lying or self-deception. It was a form of emotional abuse that had made me question my own perceptions and value for years. But that's behind me now. I've learned to trust my instincts again, to value my own worth without needing someone else's validation, and to expect honesty and equality in all my relationships. The house feels different now, lighter somehow. The rooms that once echoed with Daniel's cruel laughter now ring with the sounds of genuine conversation and real partnership. The garden where I once planned a future with someone who saw me as a convenient arrangement now blooms with possibilities I'm building entirely for myself. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never overheard that conversation, if Daniel had continued living his fantasy version of our marriage indefinitely. Would he have eventually told me the truth about his feelings? Would he have ever acknowledged the reality of our financial arrangement? Would we have had children together, with Daniel always wondering whether I loved them or just the security they represented in his imagined dynamic? The questions are unanswerable now, and that's probably for the best. Some truths are too painful to live with, even hypothetically. What I know for certain is that I deserve better than someone who could accept my love, my support, and my money while simultaneously resenting me for the very generosity that made his comfort possible. I deserve someone who sees my success as an asset to our partnership, not a threat to his masculinity. I deserve someone who celebrates my achievements instead of minimizing them to preserve his own ego. And now, finally, I believe that I'll find that person. Because I know exactly who I am and what I bring to a relationship, and I'll never again pretend to be smaller or less capable to make someone else feel bigger. The story of Claire and Daniel is really a story about the lies we tell ourselves to avoid uncomfortable truths. Daniel couldn't face the reality that he needed financial help, so he created a narrative where he was the successful provider and I was the grateful recipient. When that narrative became impossible to maintain, he simply changed his perception of me instead of changing his understanding of himself. But the most dangerous lies aren't the ones we tell other people. They're the ones we tell ourselves. And those lies can destroy not just our relationships, but our entire sense of reality. I won't live that way anymore. I won't be smaller to make someone else feel bigger. I won't pretend to be less successful to protect someone else's ego. I won't apologize for having money or brains or ambition or any of the things that make me who I am. Because at the end of the day, the person who can't handle the truth about who you are isn't the person you're meant to build a life with. And you, if you've stayed with me through this entire painful, complicated story, what would you have done when you discovered your partner of 4 years saw you as everything you actually saw them as?